and Aviram. Edward G. Robinson in Cecil B. DeMille's Ten Commandments. Dathan and Aviram conspired with Korach to cause and foment a rebellion against Moses. And their argument was a very simple argument. Their argument was, the entire nation is holy. Why should there be divisions between one Jew and another Jew? It should be a meritocracy. Depending upon your deeds, you should be able to do the highest and the most holy of services. And that's a noble idea, meritocracy. But it does not take into account that there are differences, qualitative differences, between peoples. And although all people are created equal in opportunity to satisfy their lives, but not all people are the same spiritually. The soul of one man is different from the soul of another. And the question is, why would there be a permanent barrier between the high priest, between the priests, and the rest of the classes of the Jewish people? And the answer is that God has created sensitivity to holy matters. And the sensitivity to holy matters are felt more strongly by certain people than by others. It's the nature of things. Just as there are rabbits and squirrels don't see the sky and don't understand that a God created them. They're not in tune to the Creator. The birds sing to an unseen hand, but do not know what the Creator is all about. It is only man that is sensitive to the Creator. And among men, there are different statuses, different levels of those who are sensitive and appreciative of the presence of God. And although one could say, well, this should be something that you could teach a person, there are things you can teach, but you cannot teach sensitivity. You cannot teach emotion. You can only teach action. You can teach ideas. You can't teach feelings. There are people who feel things more naturally than others. The Kohens feel. Their souls are created to feel the import of spirituality more so than the average person, the average Jew. And here's where it lies. They said there should be a meritocracy, and even though there are differences in souls, the Torah teaches us primarily the most important thing is action to transform the physical into spiritual. And there everyone is the same. Moses' tefillin are exactly the same as mine. And if I could afford to buy the most beautiful pair of tefillin, just as good as Moses' pair. That's in the physical world. So why should there be a difference? Since the most important factor is doing things in the physical. In the physical, we're all the same. In the spiritual realm, there are differences, but not in the commandments. And since the main function of the Torah is the commandments, there should be no difference between one man and another. So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that is that it negates the need for there to be a soul. It negates the need for there to be motivation. It negates the need for there to be insight, sensitivity, if you will. It makes the Torah into just a function of doing. not feeling, not having insight. God doesn't just want the elevation of the physical. He wants the revelation of the spiritual within the physical. God wants a dira b'tachtonim. God wants to live among the lower echelons. God doesn't want the lower echelons per se. God wants the holiness to be present within them, not the lower things in and of themselves. And so the process of transforming the physical is through the presence of the soul. The presence of the soul is the manifestation of this dwelling place among the lower echelons. Vis-a-vis the soul, through the soul, God transforms the physical into a palace that God desires. Without the soul, there's only the physical. Without the dwelling place, there is no one to dwell within the dwelling place if there is no soul. And so by denying the superiority of the soul of Moses and Aaron, they were saying that the physical can be transformed by action by itself. And that's not true. For action by itself is the process of purifying the physical. But the purification of the physical requires there to be a dwelling in the physical, a soul in the physical. Without that soul, the physical can't be transformed and elevated. And so here you have it. By denying the role of the soul, of the sensitivity, the insight, they were also denying the dwelling of God within the physical. And therefore the physical could not be elevated. And if that's the case, that they have established that the physical won't be elevated because they've cut themselves off from the soul of Moses, which is the source of the soul of all of the Jewish people, then the physical won't be elevated either. And therefore, this is a consequence. Their physical bodies were now cut off from the soul of Moses and Aaron. They denied that you needed a soul. And that's the case. Their physical bodies, their homes, their animals, their possessions can't be elevated, because without a soul you can't elevate it. The soul elevates it through making the body a home for holiness, but only if it's a home for holiness. The body by itself is not holy without that home. They neglected to do so. Therefore, they couldn't make their bodies and their possessions a home for holiness. And that's the case. Everything had to revert back to its original physical condition so that it might be elevated by someone else. For as long as they had possession of their things and their bodies, that physicality could not be transformed. And therefore they were swallowed back up to the earth as a consequence, because they were denying that part of the world its elevation. Its elevation through making the soul have a dwelling place. But you have to have a soul. You can't deny the soul. You can't deny the soul of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or Moses and Aaron. And that's what they were doing. They were cutting off the body from the soul. Hence the body and everything that the body owned had to go back to the earth for a second chance.